Matt Mask is a 6'6" arm wrestler from Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. Matt is known for his incredibly explosive top roll and his violent pop-offs that tend to result in the abuse of the table. Matt has wins on some of the biggest names in the sport, including John Brzenk, Devin Larratt, Hermes Gasparini, and several other elite pullers. However, as of late, Matt has been in a pretty big slump. This video is going to reveal the secret behind Matt's recent losses, the real reason Matt instantly lost a huge amount of power. So if you want to know the truth about Matt Mask, don't go away. But first, we need to clarify a few things about Matt's style as an arm wrestler. Matt's style may not be the primary reason for him not doing so well lately, but it is still a factor. Not only is Matt incredibly tall, but he also has a massive hand and long forearms for his height. Matt is a natural-born top roller. It is extremely difficult to take the high ground from Matt because Matt's forearms are just so tall. He is almost always going to have more potential to rise than his opponent will, which forces his opponent to hold on to him. This means that unless Matt's opponent can wrist curl an insane amount of weight, Matt is probably going to crack that wrist back. This is exactly what we saw when Matt Mask pulled Hermes Gasparini for the first time. Hermes was forced to hold on to Matt because of his much shorter arm, and unfortunately for Hermes, his wrist curl was not quite strong enough to do so. Hermes was never even able to gain access to his power because he couldn't contain Matt's top roll first. And this definitely had nothing to do with the league or the reffing, it was all about Matt's power. Similarly, against Devin Larratt, we have seen Matt historically have a pretty easy time cracking Devin's wrist back. Now actually finishing the match is a different issue, but Matt's ability to rise and at least take somewhat of hand control has been very impressive. And most recently in Matt's rematch against Hermes Gasparini, even though Hermes was way bigger than the last time they faced, Matt was still able to flash pin Hermes in one of the rounds, and we basically saw a repeat of their first match. If Hermes' wrist curl was able to contain Matt's top roll, Hermes destroyed Matt. And if his wrist curl was not strong enough, the table was in trouble. Notice a very important trend in Matt's success. All of these matches are against other top rollers, other opponents who are trying to rise and control the high ground just like Matt is. When Matt goes up against a top roller, he tends to have very good chances if he can get to his spot. And now we will begin to see the reversal. First, we'll take a look at Matt versus Evgeny Prudnik. Prudnik is predominantly a hook puller and one of the best in the world at that. Prudnik is not attempting to top roll Matt, but he is shooting forward and forcing the match into a wrist-on-wrist position. We can see that even from the setup, Matt does not have a good lane to attack Prudnik's fingers. None of the pressure Matt applies is even stressing Prudnik's wrist because Prudnik is pushing his arm past Matt's arm. Prudnik is forcing Matt into a hook using his entire frame as opposed to simply trying to wrist curl Matt. The result is Prudnik obtaining an unbelievably advantageous position. We see the same thing when Matt Mask faced Sandris. I think this match shows Matt's stylistic weakness even more than against Prudnik. This is because in round 1, we saw Sandris attempt to top roll Matt for a brief moment, and it actually looks like Matt may have been in control. But as soon as Sandris switches techniques and shoots forward into a hook, he crushes Matt. I think that if Sandris or Prudnik had attempted the top roll Matt would have very good chances in that match. But because they shot forward and hooked him, he never had any access to his power. And finally, against Yordan Sonev, we saw the exact same thing. Matt just was not able to block Yordan's hook in this match. It does look like Matt has some genuine power in this match, but he just can't find it. Yordan is forcing the match into a wrist-on-wrist position where Matt's pronation and side pressure is no longer attacking Yordan's fingertips. So it appears as though Matt does far better going up against top rollers instead of going up against hook pullers. But why would this be the case? I personally think that this is likely because of an imbalance between Matt's hand and his bicep. If Matt's opponent tries to fight with his hand, they are going to have a very hard time climbing over it. However, if they can shoot forward and gain access to Matt's bicep, Matt doesn't have the arm power to use more of a high hook lane like we see here from Devin. Even though Devin is in somewhat of a hook position here, his bicep is strong enough to block Sandris' sideways hits, whereas Matt's bicep is not quite there. Okay, now that we've covered the stylistic problems Matt has had with his recent opponents, let's talk about the real reason Matt has been losing. And to be honest, this is really the only reason that actually matters at all. Anyone who is deep into the sport of arm wrestling probably already knows what I'm going to say. But for those of you who don't know, I'm going to explain Matt's biggest downfall. The reason Matt Mask has been losing is because he got a hair transplant. There is only one clear indicator that directly correlates to power in arm wrestling, and that is hair loss. We've seen Uncle Todd dominate the North American arm wrestling scene for years in a row in the past, and as we know, he is bald. Devin Larratt showed massive strength gains against Michael Todd as soon as he shaved his head. He put on around 30 pounds of muscle and absolutely annihilated Michael, despite losing to Michael just a couple years prior when Devin had hair and Michael was bald. Even with Levon Saginashvili, we have seen a direct correlation between his hair length and his power. Levon's power is clearly inversely proportional to the length of his hair. Here we see Levon setting a world record curl and his hair is very short. And here we see Levon losing to Irakli repeatedly and his hair is much longer. Matt Mask is no exception to this rule. As soon as he got a hair transplant, he just wasn't the same afterward. Matt seemed to lose both power and aggression at the table after the transplant, and as we know, he has had a losing record since then. However, there is no reason to worry if you are a Matt Mask fan like I am. At any moment Matt chooses, he can simply shave his head and instantly gain 44% power. This would allow him to defeat Prudnik, Sandras, and Jordan Sonev whenever he chooses to. In all honesty, it's actually very courteous of Matt to intentionally limit his power in this way and give a chance to his opponents. Now let me know what you guys think about this, but I want to see Matt Mask versus Irakli Zarakishvili. I think Matt has been put up against way too many inside arm wrestlers, and I don't think that is Matt's best style match. I would love to see him go up against an elite outside arm wrestler like Irakli. I would consider Irakli the favorite in that match, and even if Matt takes his hand, I could still see Irakli flop pressing him. But I see that as a much better gauge of Matt's potential than Sandras or Prudnik. But let me know what you guys think about Matt Mask. Do you think that he still has a good chance of making a comeback and reclaiming that elite level? Or do you think the sport is just at too high of a level at this point? And who would you like to see Matt have a match with? Matt is just one of those pullers who has so much energy and can hype up the audience like no other. Regardless of the outcome of the match, he is always entertaining to watch. I really hope that we get to see Matt back on that elite stage as soon as possible and once again doing unspeakable things to that poor arm wrestling table.